Thanks, Anirban. Just give me a second. I'll present. Can you give me the presentation? Yeah, I hope my screen is visible to everyone. Okay. So hi everyone, I am Prithvi. Welcome to our Flutter workshop. I'll be holding a small session on Flutter, basically what it is, how to use it in our apps, as well as the programming language which we use for it, which is called Dart. So I request you guys to please make this session interactive. So if you have any questions or you have any experience working with Flutter and you think you have something to contribute to the conversation, please unmute yourselves or you can even just message in the chats so that everyone can benefit from it. So let's start with what Flutter is. Just give me a second. Yeah. So what is Flutter? Flutter is nothing but Google's UI framework. So it's an open source mobile application framework which is created by Google, and it allows developers to build high performance natively compiled applications for not just mobile but also web and desktop. It has many advantages. Before going to that though, let's just look at what mobile development looks like today. There are two main approaches that we take to mobile development. So whichever framework you use or whichever approach you take, you will find both benefits and disadvantages to it. The main two approaches that we take is to the metal and cross platform. So under to the metal, you have some advantages like platform and system integration. So you are most of the time you're going to get really high quality apps with to the metal approach. You're going to have very high performance UIs and your GPU is going to be very good. But unfortunately, in this approach, you need to spend a lot of time with developing the app to a particular platform. So suppose from the company point of view, if you have an app that you want both iOS and Android users to use, you will have to spend more time and more money, more resources with the to the metal approach, because you have to invest in two different code bases for your Android app as well as your iOS app. So because of this, you're also going to have inconsistent brand of features. So like there might be some features which will work in Android phone, but will not work in the iOS phone. For example, some of you might have attended our crowdsource event. Over there, we had this small activity where there was this image capture feature, and it was only working for Android users. So iPhone users couldn't really use that feature. So that's one of the disadvantages of to the metal approach. Then you have your cross platform approach, which, as the name suggests, its main advantage is that you can have it work for both iOS and Android with very minimal changes compared to the metal. And another major advantage is that it has this hot reload feature, which basically means that your development cycles will be faster because you can change the code uh, and see how it works immediately. You don't have to restart the app every time you make a change. So it reduces the development time. There's of course some drawbacks to it though, which is that it has a non-native look or feel. So you might the quality of the app might not be as uh, it might not be as good as it is into the metal approach. So you'll have poor performance. So if you want, you can compare like a government website. It might not have the best UI compared to say Swiggy or Zomato, one of the other apps with better development. So the main advantage of Flutter is that it combines the benefits of both these approaches. Before coming to uh, before coming to how exactly to write Flutter code, let's just look at the advantages in detail. So as I spoke, we had a hot reload button. So what does that mean exactly? You have high velocity development. So you have sub-second reload times. This means that your reload times is very less, and that you can have faster development cycle to check out the features in your app. So you can iterate rapidly on features. So if you want to add new features to your app, Flutter provides an advantage over other frameworks like React Native. And as mentioned earlier, you also have single code base for faster collab. So that basically means that if you're writing an app with Android development in mind, you can integrate iOS. You can integrate it with iOS very quickly. The UI quality is also very good. So you have this widgets feature in Flutter, and this is one of the most attractive features of Flutter. So you have customizable widgets, which makes uh, makes it very easy on the eyes. Let's look at some of the companies which use Flutter to build their apps. Obviously, Google uses Flutter since it's a Google product, but there are also some major companies like Alibaba Group, which is called the Amazon of the East. So it's one of the biggest delivery apps, and it uses Flutter. So it just shows you that Flutter can, it's a very efficient app even with very big projects. There are other companies like Groupon, Tencent, Capital One, the Hamilton Musical, which uses it for historical app purposes, uh, also uses Flutter. So a few examples of uh, Flutter screens. So you have Alibaba, you have Google AdWords, Birch Finance, Hamilton Musical. All of these are using Flutter to build their apps. So let's look at the popular tools and platforms that we use with Flutter. So you can write Flutter code in VS Code, which most of us might be more familiar with. So you can integrate other Google technologies like Firebase easily. You can use Android Studio to test your apps on the Android emulators, Xcode. There are also iOS APIs and Android APIs which you will use with Flutter. So all of this makes Flutter very easy to integrate with other technologies which you might already be more familiar with. So it will be more easier to pick up Flutter. So, what are the main advantages of learning Flutter? It's very easy to learn. It's very easy to pick up, and that's mainly because you have a lot of resources. So there's no need to like go make like have a course that you have to enroll in. Uh, there's no course or any you can find a lot of resources online basically. So there are a few websites which I would like to direct you to, which is startflutter.com, flutter.rocks, Flutter Institute, and so on. So let me just take you guys and see what flutter.institute looks like. Just give me a sec. Yeah. So this is flutter.institute. It's one of your online resources to learn Flutter. So as I said, there's no need to spend a lot of money in enrolling in courses to learn Flutter. There is a lot of online resources, so you can become expert at Flutter just by these online tutorials. We will definitely link a few of the most useful resources so that you guys can go and check it out and learn better from these sites and videos. Okay, so a few of the ways that you can use Flutter today. So you can use it to make a new app completely from scratch. So like if there is an app that you want to build, you can just directly use Flutter. There's no need to uh, you know like have to go through the basics of app development or something. You can just start off with Flutter and see where it takes you. Another way you can use it is if you already have an app that you are developing in some other platform like React Native, and you want to prototype a new app idea, you can use Flutter just for testing purposes. Especially because you can integrate both iOS and Android features in Flutter. This is an amazing way to test out or prototype your new apps. Then you can also use it just to shift over from an existing framework to Flutter. So, like, suppose you have an app that is already built on, say, using React Native, you can just shift your entire app to build on Flutter if you feel that Flutter will be more beneficial for your project. And you can also use Flutter just for a one or two screens in your existing app. So, if there is just one or two features that you want to build using Flutter, you can use it in that purpose as well. So this is basically the introduction of what Flutter is, and why you should definitely consider using it to build your apps. Now let's go a little more in depth with actually developing apps in Flutter. So for that, let's look at the code which we use while writing Flutter apps, which is called Dart. Now, what exactly is Dart? Dart is an object oriented programming language that is developed by Google, and I will just show you how it looks. Just give me a sec. Okay, so this is a small part of a code which I wrote in for Flutter using Dart. Now, for those of you who might have some experience with web development, this code seems pretty easy. It is very similar to Python. It's very similar to CSS when it comes to like front end features. So it's quite easy to pick up if you have an existing background in any programming language such as Python, Java, or any web designing components like CSS. So Dart is a compiled language, which means that it can be compiled to native code for faster performance. It has this feature called JIT compiler, that means just in time compiler, and it improves the performance of code during development. There are many advantages to Dart. One of the major advantages is scalability, which means that you can use it for apps which are more large scale. So, large scale products can be designed using Dart. You can also, one of the other advantages is that it has interoperability. What this means is that it can be used in conjunction with other programming languages. So, say you're using JavaScript, you can also incorporate Dart to build these applications. Now, I'll just show you how. So, this is a small project that we're working on using Flutter, and I'll just take you through what we've done here, so that you have an understanding of how exactly Flutter works. So this is a small delivery app that we're making, and there are of course many components that you have to keep in mind while building these apps. So it's very easy to use Flutter. I'm using it on VS Code right now. And say I have three different screens. I have an intro screen, I have a login page, I have a sign up page. So I will make different screens for each of these features, and I can incorporate, say a login button or a sign up button using widgets compatibility in Flutter. So I'll just show you the end product, and you can compare it. So, as you can see, this is the app page that we made using Flutter. So, this is just the intro page, and we've made the front end code for it using Dart. So, it's very simple. Just, you can incorporate small widgets and build it on your own. The login page, as you can see, the UI is it's very smooth. It's pretty standard actually. There are many features. So you can use Firebase, different Google APIs like Google Maps, all of that. Very seamless integration if you're using Flutter. Yeah. So all of this was designed using Flutter itself. Yeah, 1 second, number. It's kind of hanging. Just give me a sec. Yeah, sorry guys. Can you see the screen? Okay. 1 second. Okay. Now is it visible? Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. So you guys know all the advantages of Flutter now, and the basics of Dart and why that is easy to use. But what exactly makes it different from already existing frameworks? Because yes, Flutter does have a lot of advantages, but people who might have experience using React Native or Kotlin or other such platforms might have the question like, what really is the use of Flutter? Like, what makes it different from these frameworks? So we'll just compare it with its main competitor, React Native, and see why you might feel that Flutter is better. So one of the main differences is the programming language which you're using. So React Native uses JavaScript, and recently it started to move towards TypeScript even, which is a very common language, but might be a little tricky for new beginners to pick up on. However, Flutter using Dart is it's very similar to both Python and JavaScript, and is it's much easier to pick up. It's much more intuitive, so you can just it's very easy. It's very the readability is very good in Dart. Flutter also provides a native like user interface, so the widgets and control which is used in the app, they feel that they belong to the platform. But React Native, it might make the UI look different in different platforms. So it might not be very consistent compared to Flutter. Flutter also provides excellent performance due to its fast rendering engine, and the UI components, they're compiled into native code. So the performance is very good in Flutter. A React Native, however, uses bridges to communicate with native components. So it can have this thing called performance overhead, which means that it takes more time. So it might be slower in the development phase in React Native. Flutter also provides a more streamlined development environment compared to React Native. So these features like hot reload and these widgets, they're not really present in React Native. And so development time is much delayed in React Native. Over here, Flutter does come out on top. Also, Flutter, there is however, just one major drawback you can say to Flutter compared to React Native, which is that since Flutter is a relatively new framework, there are fewer libraries compared to React Native. So that's it basically about a small overview of Flutter and what it's used for, how does it differ from React Native, as well as Dart. So if anyone has any questions or any insights that they feel they want to share, please feel free to contribute. You can also just type in the chats if there is anything that you want to add. Okay, cool.